The January transfer window is shut. It's been rather underwhelming, so today we're going to react to your Premier League team's best piece of transfer business. Let's start things off with Arsenal, who had a pretty kind of mixed window. Yes, they didn't bring in every single player that they would have liked, but they did manage to get a replacement for Mesut Ozil. In fact, getting rid of his wage alone technically counts as a good transfer window. Anyway, Martin Odegaard has come in on loan from Real Madrid, and there are basically two sides to this coin, and no one knows quite how it's going to go. If Arsenal get the Odegaard they saw at Real Sociedad last season and the one they saw in the Eredivisie the year before that, things are going to go well. He's going to be very creative, provide a lot of what was missing in the last few, well, maybe even years for Arsenal. On the flip side, he could be an absolute flop, but I don't want to think negative, and I don't think that Arsenal fans should think negative. Didn't do too much on his debut, but certainly has all the ability to be an absolute success at Arsenal. Moving on though, and to Aston Villa, 40 million. Morgan Sanson came in from Marseille, and this for me could be one of the best signings of the transfer window. Very versatile in midfield, can definitely get about the pitch and provide both offensively and defensively. He's had massive experience near the top of Liga with Marseille and in the Champions League as well, so for Aston Villa to bring him in, no disrespect to them, this is a pretty good move. Look at the way they're going forward with the likes of Grealish, Barkley and Ollie Watkins. I think Sanson is going to be a fantastic addition to their midfield. Definitely a good bit of business. Moving on and to Brighton, and not necessarily about the ones in, but the ones they've managed to hold on to. Hasn't been the busiest of transfer windows for them, but for 4 million they bought in Moises Caicedo, and although we might not see so much of him in the first team right away, there were rumours that Manchester United are also interested in bringing him in, which just goes to show you how much ability he must have if United are willing to pay some money for him. Alongside this though, the real major bit of transfer business that Brighton did was actually just keeping Yves Bissouma. The Malian midfielder has been brilliant for them, no more so than this season. He's been stunning in central midfield, so much so that Arsenal and Spurs have both been linked with big moves for him, and the fact they managed to hold on to him, even if it's just until the summer, is a really good bit of business. I have no idea how many times I'm going to say business in this video, but talking of keeping players, Burnley are up next, and they managed to hold on to James Tarkowski. Pretty much for the same reason you'll see that every team in this list who's managed to hold on to a player is a good deal. It's because he's a key part of their central defence. Both Leicester and West Ham reportedly had bids rejected for the England defender in the summer of around £30 million. Sean Dyche doesn't want to lose him. He knows they're going to have to sell him in the summer because he's got 18 months left in his contract and he has not yet signed a new one. But for now, especially if Burnley get dragged into a bit of a relegation fight, Tarkowski is a major player to hold on to. Next up, and yes, if you haven't guessed by now, we are going in alphabetical order, and it's Chelsea. Nothing to do with the players this time. It's all about the transfer in the dugout. Lampard out, Tuchel in. I think this is a very good deal. Now, not only because of what Chelsea were doing this season, but it just looked like going forward, Lampard wasn't really able to turn this around and bring the best out of, well, all the big money that they spent on players in the summer. It's one thing being able to bring through a few youth products, right? Mason Mount was having a great season. Reece James has been integrated into the team pretty well, and they've got one or two others, especially Tammy Abraham, who are doing well for Chelsea. But the point is on the flip side that you want to see a return in investment. Certainly, Roman Abramovich wants to see a return on the investment that he has made, especially with Timo Werner and Kai Havertz. For everything good that the young English players did, they've got to get the big guns firing. Lampard wasn't able to do it, so bringing in Thomas Tuchel, I think, not only for the rest of the season, but in years to come, will be a very good deal for Chelsea. Next up, one from the Bundesliga in at Crystal Palace, and Jean-Philippe Mateta could be the answer to their goal-scoring problems. Honestly, over the years, I actually feel quite sorry for Crystal Palace fans, because aside from Ayew doing good things every now and then, they just do not have a goal scorer. Whether it's Batshuayi, whether it's Soloth, whether it's Connor Wickham, whether it's Christian Benteke, they just don't have a striker who finds the back of the net on a regular basis. That puts so much pressure on Wilfried Zaha, and when he doesn't perform, well, Crystal Palace inevitably don't perform. They'll be hoping that the Mainz striker signed on loan will actually be able to do the business in front of goal. Next up is Joshua King, another striker, back in the Premier League after signing for Everton from Bournemouth, and this is a pretty big deal for Everton, purely because they can't keep relying on Dominic Calvert-Lewin. We've seen it with other teams when you over-rely on one player and he drops out of form or gets injured, things aren't going to go so well. With Everton, behind Dominic Calvert-Lewin's 11 goals right now, Hammers has got 4, Michael Keane's a centre-back and he's got 3, Richarlison's got 2 in the Premier League. That's not enough if you want to sustain a top 4 challenge or really sort of go anywhere. So they'll be hoping that Josh King, who doesn't necessarily have the best record, can at least provide some competition and chip in with the odd goal here and there. Next up, and to Fulham, talking of goal scorers, in a team that is desperate for goal scorers, Fulham. They've brought in Josh Maja from Bordeaux. Now, if the name sounds familiar, he was like the main guy in that Sunderland series on Netflix. Scored a load of goals in League One, then got the move to Bordeaux, where he has developed. Obviously, you look at his stats and wouldn't be like, oh, he's been brilliant at Bordeaux. Definitely earned a move back. But it's more about his maturity, what he's doing behind the scenes and his training every day and what he's learned, that he could go back to the Premier League and be a ready-made star. But if he is, he's going to have to hit the ground running, because Fulham are in one hell of a relegation battle and they need the goals and they need them quick. This is a good bit of transfer business, unlike another relegation threatened team, but we'll come on to them in just a little bit. Next up, Leeds United. They didn't really do anything. Not really much to talk about. Things are going well for Bielsa. They're sitting comfortably in mid-table after being promoted, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Following on from then, Leicester, again, didn't really do too much. They had 6 months left on Damari Gray's contract and managed to get $3 million from Leverkusen for him, and that's kind of it. I mean, Brendan Rodgers has got Leicester playing well. Sometimes they don't quite live up to all of the expectation, but they're well in with the shout for the Champions League positions, and that's kind of what they were expected to be at the beginning of the season. Moving on though, and to Liverpool, who have finally replaced Virgil van Dijk, who's been spoken about a lot. They went around like mad on the last day of the transfer window and managed to bring in, as well as Ben Davies from Preston, Ozan Kabak from Schalke. This, in my opinion, is a very good deal. If he turns out to be absolutely rubbish, he goes back to Schalke at the end of the season. And if he doesn't, for £18 million, they can bring him in. And not only are they replacing the likes of Van Dijk, Matip Gomez, who are injured for the majority of the rest of the season, for the next 6 months, but also if he's very good and goes on to have a very high ceiling and shows lots of potential, he could basically replace those guys. Well, not really Gomez because he's young. Replace Matip and Van Dijk moving over the next few years. I mean, it's a really good situation for Liverpool to be in, and massive credit to the club for getting this deal over the line. Moving on to their rivals though, Manchester City, and again, like Leeds, nothing to shout about because in all honesty, they've gotten over their early season blip. Guardiola's got City playing brilliant football yet again. They're on an insane run of form. And like Leeds United, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I can't think, especially with Sergio Aguero back fit and Gabriel Jesus getting some goals, I can't think of an obvious position where City needed to have strengthened, and John Stones is looking like a proper centre-back now as well. So any deal for them would have been maybe a youngster for the future, but I couldn't see them doing anything important anyway, so they've done good business by basically not doing business. Right, next up on my iPad of transfers, Manchester United. Much like Manchester City, I feel like United weren't going to do any big business. Like this January wasn't going to see Upamecano join. It wasn't going to see Jadon Sancho join for like 100 million. That was kind of out the window. They have brought in Amad Diallo. Now, from what we've seen and heard in the media and in training and press conferences and under 23 games, he looks like a real talent with some insane potential. You wouldn't pay all that money for an 18-year-old with only a handful of professional appearances at the top level if you didn't think he had potential. Whether or not you're going to go and see him even start at United for the next year or so, it seems very unlikely to me. I think, though, looking at Liverpool, there could have been a few smart deals done for United had they actually gone out and looked for them. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer seems to be a little bit disappointed in press conferences that United didn't. Whether or not he's got enough to work with to mount a serious title challenge, I'm not so sure. But given all the slack that he's been given, if they go far in the Europa League and they finish in the top 4, it's still a pretty good season for United. Right, next up, add to Newcastle United. Again, not really much done, and I'm not really sure Steve Bruce is going to make it to the end of the season. What they have done, though, is brought in Joe Willock from Arsenal. A Premier League player with good creativity, and Lord knows Newcastle need it. Whether or not Steve Bruce is creative enough to bring that out of him as a manager, we're kind of waiting to see. But Callum Wilson clearly can find the goals. If he's sniffing out goals in this Newcastle team, void of any sort of attacking play, imagine what you can do when they actually put some attacking moves together, and I'm sure that Joe Willock will be central to that. Next up, Sheffield United. This is what we talked about earlier with Fulham. Like, Fulham have not gone out in Josh Maja and signed a proven Premier League goal scorer, but at least they've signed somebody. This is what I was talking about at the start of the season when Sheffield United spent all that money on Liverpool's Ryan Brewster. Like, he hadn't even played a Premier League game, was not proven, and was not going to be the guy to score them the goals to get them out of a relegation struggle. And now look what they've done. January transfer window's come and gone. Sheffield United haven't signed anyone. If they've got brilliant faith in Chris Wilder and the team to get them out of it, good. But based on the first half of the season, they don't have enough to stave off relegation. At the moment, they're on 8 points. They're set for an absolute shock of a season, and in my opinion, they really should have done something in the January transfer window. Even if they were to get like an older, experienced player who wouldn't necessarily light up the league or be good for the future, like just someone who can get a few goals for them now, whilst it's most important, and even give them a chance of surviving relegation. With that, I'm putting their chance of surviving down to 0. Sorry, Sheffield fans. Next up, and to Southampton. Takumi Minamino joined from Liverpool, and I think he's a difference maker they've been looking for. Southampton in general have been very, very good this season, but when they're having a bit of an off day and they need someone to change the game for the bench, it hasn't quite happened. They've brought on a few youngsters up front, the likes of Obafemi and Unlundu, I think his name is. Might have pronounced that wrong. And Nathan Redmond's come off the bench, but they haven't really provided much. I think Minamino could be that game changer, whether he's starting or on the bench. And the important thing is to keep continuously feeding Danny Ings or winning free kicks for James Ward-Prowse. And I think Minamino's got enough quality. Talking of Danny Ings, great transfer business as well, managing to keep him because he was linked with quite a few clubs. Next up, and to Spurs. Basically did nothing, Spurs. Dele Alli didn't leave, and I think that's probably the best piece of business. Now, having looked at the season, Dele Alli staying is not a very good piece of business because he's been very poor. But the players on the pitch at the moment for Jose Mourinho aren't doing the business. So they could do no worse than bring in someone like Ali, who's proven he can do it. It's just for whatever reason this season it hasn't quite worked. If Mourinho puts his pride and ego to the side, if Dele Alli apologises for whatever he apparently did wrong, and they get on together and we see the best of Dele Alli, it could be a resurrection for not only him and his career, but for Spurs this season as well. West Brom. They brought in Robert Snodgrass. This is a good deal for me. They brought him in from West Ham. Sam Allardyce's team, they're set up to seize opportunities when they can. They're not necessarily a free-flowing, attractive team to watch. He's in a relegation battle, and he needs to get them enough points to make sure they don't get relegated. When they've got a set piece or they need a moment of creativity or someone to take a chance sort of out of nothing, Snodgrass has definitely got the quality to do it. West Ham aren't using him that much, so I think this is a really good deal for West Brom. Moving on from West Brom and to West Ham, and they've done a very good piece of business off the back of another good piece of business. Selling Sebastian Haller for 25 million has got him a bit of money. It may not look very smart when they paid about 45 for him, but he clearly didn't fit in. He's a fantastically talented player. He did not fit into West Ham. He did not fit into the way Moyes wants to play. And you can see that. They've done so well for the majority of the season without him having a very good season. So the fact they got money for him and then managed to turn Said Ben Rama's loan deal from Brentford into a permanent one is a very, very good piece of business. I'm not sure West Ham will finish in the top 6, but my God, they've certainly got a good a chance as any in that position, and certainly the best chance they've had for quite a few years. It's a pretty good transfer window from West Ham. And lastly but not least, we move on to Wolves and Willian Jose, a great bit of transfer business. Without Jimenez, I think it's 11 games without him at the time of recording, they've been so poor. They just really... Not only have they been poor in the games, they haven't got the results and they've really lacked any attacking threat, and it's had to come from their attacking midfielders rather than the striker. And I think the signing of Jose gives them a focal point in attack, gives them a threat in and around the box, and also allows the like of Pedro Neto, Podence, Adama Traore to kind of run around and be a bit more creative outside the box without worrying themselves of having to contribute the goals and get in there at every single opportunity. I think it might take a while, but Jose is going to be a really good addition to the squad because we have no idea how long Jimenez is going to be out for. So there you have it. There is the best of your Premier League team's transfer window. Make sure you guys let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Check out everything else we've got going on. And until next time, I will see you guys later.